Welcome back to everyone to our podcast, the Fox Den Sports Podcast, along with my three lovely sons, Kellen, Gary, and Gannon. I am Todd Fox, and we are the Fox Den Podcast. And today marks our 81st episode. What player do you think of that wore the jersey number 81?
Randy Moss.
Do you remember who he played for when he wore that?
It was New England, wasn't it?
It was. Very good.
I think of good old Kellen Winslow Jr. with his time at the New York Jets as well as the Miami Hurricanes.
I will go with Calvin Johnson, wide receiver, the Detroit Lions. Arguably one of the best receivers of all time. Sadly, just like Barry, played for Detroit. Didn't get a lot of wins, But I remember him. I think he was like the pick before or the pick after Adrian Peterson. So they were both one of the better offensive players of their time. So,
well, why don't you look that up while I'm telling you mine? But no, Calvin Johnson, fantastic player. Just like what he could have been if he would have been on a really good team. Unfortunately, he was not. My number 81 is Terrell Owens. Even though he was kind of a troublemaker throughout his career, he produced when he played. He was extremely good. Played for San Francisco, then went to Philadelphia and Dallas. And I know he ended up with Buffalo and Cincinnati, but after that, I think that may have been it. But I know he tries every year to try to come back at some point, hoping he can get back, but there's no chance to up there in age. No, I don't think he could do it. But 81 for me, Terrell Owens. Did you ever figure it out?
I guess he was picked second.
Yeah,
overall.
he was.
I do not remember being that high.
He was high. So, do you have the drafts right there in front of you?
I can look it up.
I'm interested in seeing like through Peterson, because I mean some of those teams honestly should have taken Peterson.
So it looks like first pick. Oh, yikes. That was the Jamarcus Russell year. So one of the biggest busts of all time.
Sure.
Number 3, Joe Thomas, just went to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
A couple nights ago. Gaines Adams for Tampa Bay. Can't say I've heard of him. Levi Brown. Can't say I've heard of him. And LaRon Landry.
What teams? What teams were those?
Tampa Bay, Arizona, and Washington.
Good grief, man. Peterson could have ended up in a good situation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah.
Been great if he would have been a Raider. Even better if he would have been a Detroit Lion. But Calvin Johnson worked out pretty well for the Lions. I mean, from a productivity, they just can't win. They couldn't win. They just had a very bad organization. Very bad organization. Let's talk a little Big 12, and it doesn't just have to be Big 12. You're talking Big 12, Big 10. There's all this movement going around right now with these teams trading or, getting out of the Pac-12 going. I know it was announced Oregon and Washington are both going to the Big 10, correct? And
yeah.
Arizona State, and Utah all going to the Big 12. Along with, obviously, I think we talked about Colorado a few weeks ago. So what are initial thoughts on that? I mean, you're going to have, in my opinion, you're going to have two major big time conferences, the Big 10 and the SEC. And then you're going to have right underneath that, it's going to be between the ACC and Big 12. And that's just football, but I think Big 12 will be really good in basketball. What are some thoughts originally when you first heard all this news?
I think the first thing is just obviously football, because that's what makes college football or college NCAA money. But like with the new playoff format of 12 teams, like I'm very, very interested to see how that plays out now. Because you can see now, like the best team in the Big 12 or the second best team in the Big 12 making it, when arguably they're not as good as the fifth or sixth best team in the Big Ten or SEC. Like, I just think it's going to be very interesting to see how they do that whenever you have, like you said, two mega conferences. Big 12 is going to be pretty right behind them, I think, especially with their competitiveness in every other sport and getting teams like Utah. I mean, Oklahoma State, now we have no idea. They could pick up steam, but they'll still compete in football, but it's not going to be at the level like SEC and Big Ten where you're scared every week, no matter what team you are, essentially.
Now it'll be interesting with Oklahoma State. I mean, the best football teams in that conference. It all depends, in my opinion, if Dave Aranda sticks around at Baylor or if he gets a bigger job. The guy Matt Campbell at Iowa State, and they kind of took a little bit of a dip a little bit last year. K-State.
Also, Oklahoma, yeah, K-State's on the come up for sure, but Oklahoma State too, like even with the 4-team playoff, I think they were like one game away from making it.
Yeah.
2 years so far,
Yeah.
like throughout this time. So like once it goes up to 12-team, if they just put together a couple of good seasons like they have in the last, I don't know, 8 years or whatever, however long the college football playoffs been around, like they'll be relevant for sure.
No, I agree 100%. They'll definitely Oklahoma State continues to play, with as long as Mike Gundy's there, I believe. If he leaves, I don't know. We'll see. It just depends, because that's a stepping stone school, really, for most people. For him, he wants to stay there, which is fantastic for them. So they need to keep him there as long as possible. I don't know, if depends on, it'd be fun to see if Deion Sanders can turn Colorado around. I kind of have a feeling like if he turns them around, let's say in a couple, 2 or 3 years, that he'll be gone to a bigger school. I hope not. I'd like to see him stick around there and turn them around. But it'll be definitely interesting to see. I think basketball, just think KU, Baylor. I mean, Texas Tech's been pretty good. Houston,
Arizona,
BYU, just BYU's like just one of those blue collar teams that just kind of beat up on you. They're just usually just big guys. Utah used to be really good at basketball back years ago, whenever I think in the 90s, Rick Majerus was the head coach, early like 2000 time frame. So I think from basketball standpoint, even K-State's been turning around. They'll be fine. But what's going to be interesting is the Big Ten now. I mean, you've got USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington all going there to go with Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Those are probably the 4 best programs in the Big Ten right now.
Yeah, did you say Penn State?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think on the Big Ten side, I think the funniest thing I've seen so far is that when USC decided to make that move with just UCLA, they figured that that would solidify them as like the only essentially destination to go on the West Coast. So now that Oregon and Washington are going, it completely just eliminates the main reason they decided to make that move. And now, I mean, as a lot of people are seeing and complaining, like you're gonna have to travel, from West Coast to East Coast essentially.
I agree
for a quick football game in the middle of school.
Gannon, Kellen, you guys got anything to add?
I mean, I was just thinking it's like cool how these things are going. I always like whenever like sports organizations are trying to like advance and take steps forward, but is it not like bad that everything is so top heavy now with the 2 powerhouses? Like it's so top heavy, there's no balance, I feel like. And I don't know, like obviously it's probably more money, but it's got to be bad, right? Like however many years from now.
I would think so, but the way, I don't know what it was, but the way you said that made me think, honestly, it could be a countering of all the blue bloods of NIL. Like, because NIL, everyone's thinking the talent's going to get spread across a lot more, which we've seen it has, honestly. But now all these big teams, blue bloods, and high marketed teams switching conferences to try and lock up again, more recruits and stuff like that. So honestly, I can see that being a big reason is behind the curtain is just them wanting to get rid of just the little guys again.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't have thought of that. That's a good point.
I think
Underlying
I think it's TV deals that have a lot to do with it because they get a lot of revenue off of the TV deals. So you got to sign with the two biggest ones right now, Big Ten and SEC. I really think Big 12 will be right there. I do. I think the ACC is going to crumble, but it may be a little bit because I don't know how any of those teams can get out, which I'm sure they'll figure something out. There'll be some kind of buyout of some sorts. I don't know. I just personally, I hate to see it because all these teams spread apart from so much time zones, and then like you just said a minute ago, like all the traveling and like, can you imagine like Oklahoma plays in Gainesville, Florida? I mean, not that we go to road games, but you know what I mean? Like there's going to be some people that it'd be tough to go and more expensive to go.
Well, also, most schools, other than football, most of them drive.
Yeah.
You're right.
If I'm not mistaken.
And
And
you're
even
right.
and even some football teams. Like,
Yeah.
So that's alone like absolutely insane. I saw Arizona State's average travel for football is 1,100 miles. And that's just them on kind of close to the conference they're in already. So now absolutely insane. But
Kellen, what are your thoughts?
I don't know. Sometimes I think I like the tradition of just having all these. Like if we lose the Pac-12, like they've been around for over 100 years, that's kind of crazy. I also sometimes think there should be a limit. I think 12 teams max in a conference would be cool. But also, like if you just go from like take away the money and think about the students, I think it'd make more sense for conferences to be close together because of the traveling. Because you think, unless you're going pro, like you're still in school, and if you're doing all this traveling, that's going to be affecting your grades. So unless you're one of those few college students that's going to the NFL or the NBA, the rest of those people, their sports aren't going to make them that much money after college. So I think it'd be cool too. You have these teams that you never play against unless you get to a bowl game or the playoffs, and you have these teams from other divisions that you just never you haven't seen in years. That I just think it just would make way more sense than stacking everybody into the SEC.
No, I agree 100%. I know I've heard one prominent person on the media in the media talk about the Big Ten, how cool it is because now they're going to have some teams in the Eastern time zone, Central, Mountain, and the West, or Pacific time zone. But I understand what they're saying because there'll be you can have a game start early and you can have 4 or 5 games, boom, boom, boom. But 75% of Americans live in the Central and the Eastern time zone. Obviously, Eastern is more. I think Gann and I looked it up. It's in the 40s, 40 something percent, 45% or so. Cause I think it was like 29%, 30% in the Central time zone. So most of the people live in these two areas. So where it just makes sense that to me, not to have to sit there and go back and forth for all these kids, and the traveling piece of it. Obviously there's going to be people that are going to travel, make that commitment and make that journey. And that's, hey, kudos to them. I think it's great. Even a trip to like, Ole Miss or Alabama, Auburn, it's a little ways away. So, but we'll
also
see.
speaking on that, like what time is it going to be when Rutgers or whatever goes and plays USC in New York? What time is that going to be? 11, 12 at night before it starts?
No, I don't think they would do that to him. I don't think they would at all.
But USC doesn't play any home games hardly during the day because it's so freaking hot.
Interesting.
Generally.
I'll tell you what's really interesting, how you talk without your lips moving. That is so cool. If anybody hasn't seen that yet, it's pretty neat.
Watch
But
the
I-
YouTube to get that one. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a
Well,
Go
would
ahead.
it not just put the game at the regular Eastern time zone? Because
Yeah,
I know
that's
I
what
know
they're
at
gonna
least for
do. Yeah.
NBA, like if a
Yeah.
game was on West or East, it just caters to whatever the home
Correct.
is.
Exactly right.
So it might be like a what 3 p.m. game for West
It
Coast.
yeah, it's possible they could do it at 8 o'clock at night on the East Coast. It's possible. Not saying they won't or they will. My guess would be 7 o'clock kickoff would be the latest, and that would be that'd be 4 o'clock. Yeah, and on the Pacific time zone. So, but I know there's a lot of TV sets out there in the Los Angeles area. But the Mountain hardly has anything. I mean, I don't know how many big towns are in the Mountain. I really don't. I just know Denver is there. Other than Denver, I don't know the answer to that. So it's like hardly anybody I shouldn't say hardly anybody, but it's just not very many people in the U.S. live in that Mountain time zone. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But I know, I don't know. I just think I like what Kellen said, 12 teams. Some point I want to show at some point, not tonight, get my information together, like what I've put together, like what I thought should happen along the ways, how many different conferences there should be. I think I had 6 quote unquote super, not super conferences, but instead of what do they call it? What do they call the 5 now?
Power 5.
Power 5 would be like a Power 6. And then there's 2 smaller ones that get a chance to play in the playoff. And I think it was a 16 team playoff, which I'll be honest with you, I think that's what's going to happen eventually. Is it'll turn into 16 instead of 12. I don't know how soon, but I think that's what'll happen.
I mean, I couldn't tell you who. I've seen people saying that the committees talked about not negotiating, but I guess just talking about again how many teams they should have with all this switcheroo and stuff. But I don't know. I still think in every conference, SEC, Big Ten, whatever, there's still only going to be 3 to 4 teams a year,
Right.
or not a year, but consistently. Like
Right.
SEC, it's still going to be Georgia, it's still going to be Alabama, and then with us and Texas coming into the mix, we'll see who the other 2 are. But Big Ten, it's still going to be Ohio State, still going to be Michigan, still going to be Penn State, and then maybe USC. So I think the only differentiator and everything is obviously the head coaches.
Sure.
And other than that, the players are still going to commit to the same teams that they probably would have. Like, it's not going to be a whole lot different. You'll just see teams like the middle pack of the SEC now fall off. And then I think you'll see a couple of risers like we were talking about earlier in the Big 12, whether that's Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Utah getting more consistent in their, years of good football. But
no, I agree 100%, but it goes in waves. Alabama was up, then they went down. They went back
it
up
will.
again.
And you'll
You know
see
what I mean?
once a year, like
Yeah.
that one team who comes out of nowhere with all their seniors and stuff, and then they graduate and you don't hear about them for another 5 years. Like,
It's all about
still gonna
the
be
coaches. College football, it's all about the coaches and how they can recruit and get their best players, and then
And develop.
coach them up. You know what I mean? So when Saban leaves, who knows what's going to happen? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I saw this statistic saying we were the second best team in the country percentage wise of getting 3-star players and getting them to the draft, but we're also like bottom 10 of bringing in 5 stars and getting them to the draft. Now, obviously, that's previous head coaches, stuff like that. Stoops didn't get a whole lot of 5 stars. Lincoln Riley did, but we didn't see a ton of, like, I guess, his starting players to the end. Like, we only saw a couple of them. But
Right.
So we're really good at getting those small guys that nobody really wants to develop, but the high profile guys, whatever it is, we just historically have had a harder time. But
I'm telling you, though, I really think Venables, as long as he can coach these guys.
Oh, yeah. And we've seen
building
Clemson.
a solid team.
Just look at the
right.
defensive players in the NFL right now that have played
Right.
for him. Like it's a solid group. The
No,
only
I
other
agree
team
100%.
that might be better would be like Bama and Georgia.
Right. He can obviously coach. He can coach defense. He built it at Clemson, built defenses. If he can build our defense that way too. I don't want to sit there and act like we're not going to have an issue with offense because you never know. But I think Levy's fantastic. I think they keep getting the right kids in there from the offensive side. Make sure they get the O line with Biedenbow fixing that offensive line. It's just there's something about that. I guess I don't know if it's the decision making or organization. I don't know what it is. That's where I think we're still waiting to see with Brent Venables. And I put out a tweet on my own personal account today that talks about the similarities to year 2000 and then 2023. So in 2000, Bob Stoops was getting ready to coach his second year, just like Brent Venables getting ready to coach his second year. Oklahoma had Josh Heupel, a left-handed transfer quarterback who played the year before for the team in a disappointing, it was 7-5. We were excited then because we stunk the 3 years prior. Now this year we've got Dylan Gabriel in his second year, left-handed quarterback once again, a transfer. Could it be? Could the stars align? Because our schedule, to be honest with you, I'm not busting on chops of other teams, but it appears on paper, but you know how that goes, that it's quite a bit easier than years past. Now I know Texas will be a challenge. I think going to BYU will be a challenge, and there'll be some other games. Could it be though that we have a shot?
I think you're right. I mean, obviously the only one that really makes you raise an eyebrow is obviously Texas, but
yeah.
We should be obviously Arkansas State, should be SMU, should be Cincinnati, Iowa State, UCF, Kansas. Oklahoma State's still a toss-up, but obviously the way we beat them last year and with everything they lost, we obviously should still win that. And then I think it would really just come down to the last 3 games of not just randomly dropping one for no reason between West Virginia, like you said, BYU, and then TCU, who's had some returning players, but they also did lose quite a bit of importance from the championship last year.
I agree 100%. And Kellen or Gannon, did you have something?
Oh, we don't have a shot.
What's that? You don't think
having
so?
an easy schedule is what's got us into the mess in the past. So even if we made it to the Final Four, we're not going to win anything.
I don't disagree, but I mean, I don't disagree. I'm not gonna, but you never know. Like if this team just kept building and then getting better and better with the more reps and practicing, you never know. Number one. Number two, like you said something about Texas. How do we know? Like last year, it would have been a completely different game if Dylan Gabriel would have played. Now, I still think Texas was the better team and they would have won, but it would have been closer. What happens if Quinn Ewers, I don't want him to, but I'm just saying if he were to get hurt, what would happen, to that game? So there's things like that you just never know that could happen. But sitting here, I think it's quite a long shot. Oh, that's another thing is we were in the coaches poll. We're ranked number 19 from the coaches. Well, in 2000, the coaches ranked us number 20. So there's so many of these similarities, and that doesn't mean squat. I get it. It's just interesting to see how a lot of these type of things are kind of lining up, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. And the second year head coach, but
yeah.
What, if you guys had to pick 4 teams to make the playoffs right now, who would your 4 be?
Alabama.
That's interesting because like Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State all have new quarterbacks. I think USC is one of them.
I think those 4 are.
I agree. USC.
Easy answers. I think Alabama and Georgia for the time being are locks nearly.
Until somebody beats them, I agree with you.
I think Ohio State, they have the best wide receiver in college football. And
just interested in seeing who their quarterback's going to be.
Yeah, but I feel like I could go out and throw to him.
No, you're right. Okay. I don't disagree. It's most likely if you were, I would say Ohio State but USC and then what am I trying to say? Alabama.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see USC
Georgia.
go number 1 and then go down to
Hmm.
we're getting more teams this year, aren't we?
Yeah.
So they're not going to make it far, but they'll probably win. They'll win a round or two, but they'll lose to somebody like 4 or 5, I'm sure. But I could see USC being number 1 just because I don't see them losing little games like they did last year.
What do you mean get more teams? What do you mean?
Well, there's more teams in the playoffs. So I was going to say they lose to Alabama
Oh.
number 4.
No, I
Were
thought
you
there's
saying-
No,
still
that's
4,
next
wasn't it?
year. That's
Okay,
next
I thought you were
year.
saying-
I thought you were talking
So
about
then,
the
I
Big
think
12.
they lose to Alabama.
Yeah.
Alabama's going to be number 4. Alabama stomps them in the playoffs. A Lincoln Riley.
They're just
special.
so you're right because I mean they're well Alabama and Georgia are well coached, got good defensive schemes that shut down like USC's kind of I don't know they're just not as tough if that makes any sense. And I think Ohio State, all 3 of those teams are tougher than USC. USC back when Pete Carroll was there, and even before that, John Robinson and John McKay back in the day, those were tough teams, but. Unless Riley turns it around, which is possible, but he hasn't shown that yet.
I mean, they have a pretty respectable schedule this year. They have to play Notre Dame, USC, Washington, and Oregon. So if they
Yeah.
make it with only 1 loss, I mean, power to them. That's
Sure.
a tough schedule.
But we talked about this a few weeks ago. I think Alabama and I think Georgia are both going to have a loss sometime in the regular season, and Ohio State as well, because they've got new quarterbacks. And regardless on who it is, every year each team has at least 2, sometimes 3 games, regardless how good you are, that you have a little bit tougher time. Sometimes it's at home, sometimes it's on the road. How are these guys going to perform in that kind of pressure situation is what I'm looking at. And I just honestly think it's going to be tough for them to go undefeated. Now, I could be wrong, but that's just my opinion. What do you think?
One thing I'm wondering is, at least like with a lot of the NBA superstars, like they don't actually win their first championship till their late 20s.
Yeah.
Which is like relatively late in their career in a sense. So like, because you said Riley really hasn't proven himself, which is true. But is that a common thing with coaches too? Like it might take them a few years of losses, then they figure it out, and then they go on their winning. Like, or is the natural coach a winner since day one and he just unleashes?
No, I mean, it took Saban plenty of years, and Kirby's been at Georgia for several years too.
Yes,
Like,
I'm wondering. So like,
Well,
Riley's this is what, his 5th year, 6th year as like the head coach.
guy, I think this will be his 6th or 7th. Yes.
Okay. So I mean, it's quite a few years, but he's still like
Right.
early-ish, especially compared to all these other top dogs. So like, I was wondering if there's
Good
a couple
question.
of years, of honestly, just still growth,
feel
and
like
then maybe it clicks, and then he's on a roll.
I feel like the biggest difference to me would just be the fact that like they're in. It's not like they're being drafted in there. They're around college football. They're usually offensive
for sure.
coordinator, defensive coordinators.
Right.
They have,
Yeah.
or sometimes some guy pulled from the NFL. Like,
That's
I just
true.
wasn't sure if there's still obviously room for him.
Well, Saban
Figure
coached
it
at
out.
Michigan State and did pretty well, but I mean, he obviously wanted to get a bigger program, so he went to LSU. I honestly don't know how many years he was there. I don't think he was there that many. And
what year did he win it? Because he was at LSU for only 4.
Yeah, so
2000 to 2004.
2003 is when he won it with LSU.
Okay, so he coached about, I mean, like that said, 7, 8 years.
So this could be, to Gannon's point, this could
So
be
within a couple years, Riley
Lincoln
could
Riley. Yeah. Now
But did any of-
Stoops, go ahead.
Well, did any other coach though consistently come in, look really good, and then like
that's true too.
lose
yeah.
it all in the end every year?
I don't know.
It's
I
a
mean,
consistent thing for him.
Stoops won it in a second year, never won it again, but he did go to 3 more championship games.
It's
So
kind of the opposite.
You know what I mean? So, but I mean, honestly, man, that's a great point because I mean, Tom Osborne, of course, this is way back. He didn't win any. He won 3 national titles with Nebraska, but it wasn't until Switzer left. And I'm not blaming it on it. I'm not saying it's because Switzer left, but I mean, that's whenever they just kind of ascended to a better program. Joe Paterno, I couldn't tell you how many years he won or he played or he coached before he won. Steve Spurrier, same way. Urban Meyer is a guy that comes to mind that kind of won pretty early after Utah.
Yeah,
He was
off
really
the
good
bat.
at Bowling Green in Utah, and then he went to Florida and won fair. I don't want to say real early, but it didn't take him too long, and then went to Ohio State. I think he was a fantastic college coach. Obviously, he bombed out in the pros, but from a college standpoint, man, that guy could coach football. And same thing, Mac Brown. Took Mac Brown a little bit too to win at Texas. And I'm trying to think of all the daggum schools that have won titles. But to Gannon's point, I mean, it's true. I mean, all it takes is if USC had a defense, a scary type of defense, that'd be scary to play. I mean,
But I
they
feel
really
like that's
would.
been that literally has been the story of Lincoln Riley's
Right.
career.
Oh, yeah,
If he
for
had a
sure.
defense, we'd be competing more.
Yeah.
But he's gonna get he's at some
One
point
would think,
he will get
but-
somebody in there. I promise you.
Well, yeah, I mean, this year he's got the best defense he'll ever have. So
Really?
we'll see if it makes a difference or not. But talent wise, he's
I-
dumb for still having Grinch, and I don't understand that. But
Yeah.
I think it's just loyalty, is what I think. I think he's loyal.
yeah, he probably just promised him
You
he'd
don't know
keep him
nothing
for
about
a couple
loyalty?
years or something. and-
No, I agree with you, Kellen. But I mean, I really do think that he's loyal. True, he didn't have any loyalty to Oklahoma, but I think he was loyal to Grinch. I really do. I think he's loyal.
I think he knew if he pulled Grinch, he had a lot of pull in the players that he already got committed to OU, as well
yeah,
as the
for sure.
current players at Oklahoma.
For sure. And it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. I can't wait. It's like how long is it? 2 weeks?
24 days?
24 days, 3 weeks?
23, 24, yeah.
So I cannot wait for college football to be here. It'll be exciting. What are you guys looking forward to the most? Other than, I mean, I'm obviously looking forward to Oklahoma playing. Sitting here today on what is today, the 7th, I would say a 10-2 record. You know, I think we've talked about that before. Is what I'm guessing. But we shall see. But I'm looking forward to see how these other guys like the Ohio States, the Alabamas and Michigans play with new quarterbacks. Doesn't Tennessee have a new quarterback too?
Yeah.
So that'll be something to see as well. Though there's always that one team that kind of does a lot better than everybody thought. I don't know who that team's going to be. Last year TCU shocked everybody. I don't think anybody had them ranked very high.
Yeah.
You know?
Rightfully so. But
Well, sure, and I agree 100%. I would love to see if Michigan could do something. I mean, Harbaugh's the kind of he can take you to the dance, but they just can't. They can't knock the door down or whatever. I don't know how. Stinks. What do you think?
For me, it's probably just quarterback play because if
Yeah.
multiple guys have a good year next year in the draft, we could see
Oh yeah,
6 top 10 picks being a quarterback.
no kidding. I know Caleb Williams and May. Who else?
Ewers,
Oh yeah,
Penix
that's true.
Jr.,
Yeah.
this Joe Milton guy, and I mean,
Don't say it.
hypothetically,
Don't say it.
all right.
Let's hear it. Who?
If they win 10 games and it's because of him, Rattler,
Well, you never know.
and
You're
they
right.
have a good team that they could 100% win 10 games and get into the SEC championship.
slap that
So
on
like,
the Instagram right there.
all right, I'll do it. But also too, like to your point, also new quarterback play for big powerhouse schools
Right.
like the Ohio State, like the Georgia, stuff like that. I mean, and Tennessee now,
Right.
but
I'd like to
we'll
know
see.
the last.
And Bo Nix is another quarterback to add to that top 10.
Or is he at Oregon?
yeah,
That's true. I'm interested in seeing it because I don't know when the last time we had like these, last time we had these like programs like this, all having new quarterbacks at the same time. I'm sure it's happened, but it seems to me like if they were looking for parity, it's not happening. It's like the same teams keep just rolling right now.
and next year it's gonna be the same. Like us, Texas, Alabama will need another one. Tennessee will need another one. Michigan will probably, I think, need another one. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting.
I can't wait to see
It's
Jackson
getting a lot
Arnold.
more
Oh,
revolving.
can't wait to see.
That's
him.
I know. That's nothing against Gabriel.
I know.
I
Yeah.
love him a lot. That's the only way I can see us having a hypothetically undefeated record is if Arnold's just that good and he comes in. You know what I mean?
He's the real
But
deal.
Other than that, yeah.
I agree.
That's all I
100%.
got.
Well, I know the Fox Den appreciates everybody listening to the podcast this evening. I know you guys have a lot going on. You're listening to the podcast. We're going to have another one out later on this week as well. Garrett, give a little sneak peek on what that podcast is going to be.
Yeah, some of you guys might remember our legendary podcast last year where we ranked, top 32 quarterbacks in the NFL. A lot of hot takes, a lot of heat going around. I so far am personally the only one that's seen the lists. There's quite a difference in multiple players where
Is there really?
there's multiple players that some people it's towards the bottom, some people it's towards the top. I was surprised. Some I agree with, some I don't. But anyways, it's gonna be a longer episode. It's a yearly special essentially. Last year it was our great debate episode. So if you haven't listened to it, go ahead and check it out. Well, another one coming out this week.
And remember, it'll be on YouTube channel as well. So subscribe to that. You'll be able to see it right whenever it gets put out. And make sure you do that. We've got Twitter account that Kellen's running right now. I think it's the X account now or whatever you want to call it, but it's Twitter to me. There's a Facebook page, Fox 10 Sports. Garrett's in charge of the Instagram, correct?
Yeah. Also, this next episode is going to be more accustomed to the YouTube video just because we'll have the
Slides.
We'll have the slides and show going of all the different players and everything like that. So if you have time to watch probably an hour and a half YouTube video, or you can just listen to it while it's on, either way, but it's definitely going to be more accustomed to the YouTube channel.
It's just always fun once a year to just show my kids who's boss on the rankings, because it's, I always win. So it's pretty neat. I like to win. I thought I taught them how to win, but then again, I forgot that they're going up against the greatest, and that's myself.
I'm trying to think what you've
Please.
won in recent years.
Huh?
I'm trying to think what you've won in the recent years.
Man, I've won a life. I hit the lottery with life. Gorgeous Mall, three outstanding sons, and then cute little C, man. That's what I won at. But again, we want to appreciate everybody for listening to our podcast. And remember, iron sharpens iron.
Please stay safe.
Be savage and not average.
And remember to join the Skulk.
Until next time,
Goodbye, everybody.
Everybody.